Hello and welcome to this Oda episode of the Eternal Law. On the last Oda episode we saw the Oda forces frantically defending against a Hazakiyama attack on Umi province, the enemy overpowering the Oda defenders with force of numbers and skill. The survivors from both armies came to brawl on the Tenshu capture point and the Oda eventually just won. However, then a Yamanouchi army came and attacked North Shinano, but the good news is that we had an army led by General Kiyonori coming up the hill towards the castle to try and help them, although it was being severely delayed by the Yamanouchi's raiding forces, and eventually it turned out we couldn't get there in time. The Yamanouchi simply captured the Tenshu just as we were able to try and get forces inside, leading to a defeat, and then another attack on Oda Castle as a Honma naval force lands troops who come on to attack the castle at Kaga province, and we just saw the Oda's light infantry frantically falling back. The enemy's heavy ninja force storms the inner tiers. Now let's continue. They may send 10,000 more men. We shall just kill 10,000 more men. Endless is our power to resist. Endless is our right to rule. Endless is the jealousy of our defeated foes. When the rule of men unites the 12 clans against us, it can only be the rule of heaven that saves us from breaking. The Oda clan must rule Japan, or the war will not end. Heaven will not permit it to end until a man of my blood commands the clans to lay down their arms from the porch of the Shogunal palace. So we're back with the Oda, who are still fighting to defend the castle at Kaga province from the Honda invaders. You can see we've already lost the outer tier of the castle to them, and their ninjas are swarming inside, whilst the rest of their troops are just waiting for an opportunity to get up the walls. On the next tier we have a few troops. All of our light troops are falling back to defend the inner sanctum, whilst these men are going to prepare to hold the enemy while our archers fire down to try and take out the clumps of enemy units they can hopefully form. You can see there these katana pirates engaging with the lighter long yale ashigaru and doing okay for now, but of course soon there'll be even more men for them to face and they'll be overwhelmed. Inside the castle you can see I'm forming up all the archers I can, pulling them in, ready to fire over the side of the wall into the clumps that are going to form up, but of course the men who aren't actually on the wall are going to have a hard time seeing what they're firing at and getting a good firing angle. Over on the west side we've almost defeated the enemy attackers. You may remember it was almost all bow samurai, and I've charged my katana samurai reserves out to try and engage with these bow samurai, and we've almost defeated them. My men are simply superior in melee, and they have supporting fire from some of the archers on the wall. So over there things were won. So the battle was actually going to be decided on the east side. You can see the enemy are now beginning to reach this second tier in force. Their numbers are beginning to swell past the numbers we've gathered so far. Here Naginata Samurai are attempting to hold out against the enemy's Ashigaru. They should do okay. However, the enemy ninjas in the area will be very apt to take down those Naginata Samurai. And you can see here my katana pirates have been all but wiped out. Huge swarms of enemy troops gathering around to kill the survivors, still taking arrows from the men inside the castle, and some of them are already going for the inner sanctum. Over here we've just about seen the last of the enemy's reinforcements coming up onto the second tier, so now at least we can see all the enemies we need to kill, but can we kill them? So the enemy are now beginning their assault on the inner sanctum of the castle, having pretty much cleared out the opposition presented by the katana pirates. The ninjas have come over the top of the wall. They're deciding what to do, and whilst they do so are being hit by all the archers I have stationed back near the Tenshu capture point. I've basically got all my archers back from the walls with the intention of firing at the walls as the enemy come over them to try and take out some of the enemy troops, and I'm using my bow ashigaru garrison to hold the enemy in place whilst the rest of my archers back here can do that. So those poor bow ashigaru garrison are simply a sacrifice. Here you can see a few enemy Ashigaru have snuck up and are now going for that archery tower to try and capture it. My bow Ashigaru unit nearby absolutely annihilates them with a volley of arrows, so that didn't go very well for them. Outside the castle it looks like we've lost pretty much everything, but the reinforcements from the west side have just started to arrive. These men, having defeated all the enemies over on the west, can get involved in this fight and stop the enemy from coming up into the inner sanctum from the southerly directions, which will at the very least allow my archery strategy inside to work, since all of my men are facing east, and that's the direction I want the enemy to assault from ideally. It looks like these Oda troops here are breaking. The enemy swarming around, killing the survivors, still taking arrows from the castle above, but soon they'll be able to go in and try and attack those archers themselves. Inside the castle, the enemy's Yani ninjas have caught up to my archer battalions, now starting to break them up. But you can see I'm trying to move my archers around to the side so that my bow samurai can take out these ninjas, which they're doing quite well, filling them with arrows, which is the one weakness of ninjas is the fact that they have light armor and are very vulnerable to taking arrows. I am taking lots of friendly fire in the process, but taking a few friendly fire casualties amongst the Boashigaru is a worthy price to pay to take out these ninjas who otherwise I have no way of killing. Looks like enemy samurai are now joining the fight here up on the inner sanctum. All these ninjas seem to be bunching up on the walls because they're trying to go up against the Boashigaru who are firing down against their comrades below. But because they're slightly bunching up here, I'm directing my archers to fire into these blobs of enemy troops and take out as many ninjas as I can. So with every volley, more and more enemy ninjas are defeated, and there aren't that many left because quite a lot of them were defeated in the fighting to get up to this inner sanctum. So things aren't actually going too badly up there. The enemy numbers are being sapped very quickly every second, but they're indecisive about where to move or whether to attack my Boashigaru rather than my bow samurai in the center, which is the real threat. Here enemy samurai are coming up to engage my Yari samurai. The Yari samurai can do a good job of holding the enemy in place whilst the arrows take them out and killing the stragglers. Now suddenly it looks like a chain rout is ensuing on the inside of the castle. The enemy's forces are sprinting faster than I have ever seen any forces sprint to try and get out of the castle. I move my Yari samurai actually to try and stop them, but the battle's already over. It's a decisive victory for the Oda forces. The Honma couldn't run away fast enough, it seems, and that archery strategy did very well in holding the inner sanctum. So even though we ran out of melee units, we had only archers, the enemy could very easily have taken us out. That careful use of sacrifices led to a victory, and you can see the result of those sacrifices shown on the battle results screen. We've lost a whole bunch of regiments, losing 1,500 troops. The enemy lost something like 2,000, even more than that even. So it was a victory in terms of numbers as well. It wasn't a purely Pyrrhic victory. The castle remains ours and the Honma army falls back slightly there. Now some more good news. We have mastered Gunpowder Mastery, the art that allows us to build matchlock Ashigaru whenever we want. My hope is that the presence of these matchlock Ashigaru among our ranks will turn the tides against the huge armies of heavy samurai we have to face. So I'm going to start recruiting tons of these matchlock Ashigaru right away, and hopefully soon we'll see them getting into action. Once the signal is given, take aim. The matchlock is not to be aimed upwards like a bow, but straight forward so that the muzzle faces the enemy. Focus along the side here and point the matchlock towards the stomach of the opponent. Then, when I give the order, you are to pull the lever, keeping a firm grip, causing the shot to be released. Descend to one knee and begin the reload drill you have already practiced to allow the men behind you space to begin their firing routine. And I warn you, it will be loud. So we've survived another end turn routine, but of course our lands are full of invading enemies for us to be concerned with. We've got Chosokabe and Uesugi forces rampaging around Uesugi province, so our first priority is probably going to have to be getting rid of these guys. Now, I wanted to see whether I could sabotage the Uesugi main force. My plan being to make sure that they don't reinforce any Chosokabe men in the area, to demolish the Chosokabe, and then to take out that smaller Uesugi force next door to their main force to get rid of them. And by then I should have an absolute numerical advantage over the remaining Uesugi forces and be able to take them out with ease. So the idea is never to fight a battle where I don't have a huge numerical advantage. But before I actually engage in any battles, I wanted to sort things out over on the east side of the Oda domain, where Kinori is currently sitting around in Yamanouchi territory, former Oda territory of North Shinano. I wanted to try and get him out, but on the way I wanted to dispatch this tiny Yamanouchi army which was sitting at the crossroads between North Shinano, Kai and the Yamanouchi lands to the east. But it turned out that just going towards him used up all of Kinori's movement points. I thought he'd be able to move further than that, so it looks like I'll have to wait until next turn get him back to safety, so hopefully the Yamanouchi won't attack his depleted army whilst he's sitting there in their territory. So back in Owari, it's time to begin the ultimate plan of taking out all these enemy forces. First I'm going up against the Chosokabe main force, led by only 1-star general, so my men should have an easy time taking him out in an auto-resolve, especially if I can get as many troops as I can into the area. I'm combining the armies of Nobuhide and Takayama Muneyori. Both of them have subordinate generals Nobunaga and Nobuyuki respectively, and they're going to go up against the Chosokabe forces, and you can see from the balance bar that the game thinks we have a huge advantage. This is probably because even though our troops are lighter than the enemies, they're all extremely veteran, so our Ashigaru are effectively fighting a samurai now. They're so experienced and skilled. And so we completely dominate the Chosakabe army. It is gone. One enemy stack is down for very acceptable casualties. Good news. So now I need to decide which stack to go up against next. It seemed logical to take out the next Chosakabe stack, since they were, quite annoyingly, sitting on the bridge between Owari and Mino, which means the two provinces can't really reinforce each other at the moment, since the enemy are effectively putting up a blockade. For this I decided to send out our newest general, Toyotomi, to come and reinforce, whilst Takayama Muniyori comes up to actually push the enemy back. So the enemy are rushing north to hide in the forests of Mino. I could go after them, and probably be a waste of Takayama's elite force to go and hunt down those chasing Chosakabe men, so I decided not to send him, and instead to send just Toyotomi to go and fight them on his own. But of course he's going to be reinforced by the garrison in Mino, which means when the battle ensues he has such a huge advantage that again I can use auto-resolve to simply eliminate that Chosakabe army from the map and gain another victory for Oda and more experience for General Toyotomi. So that's all of the Chosakabe threats in the area. Gotten rid of. Very good news, we don't have to worry about the Chosakabe for now at least. We still have to worry though about these Uesugi forces, but since the Chosakabe are gone we now have plenty of spare forces to arrange against them and can quite easily gain numerical equality or even superiority over the local Uesugi forces. To try and do just that, I'm combining Nobuhide and Takayama's armies once again, moving them into a reinforcement position really near the enemy armies, and then I'm moving the garrison from Mino down to further reinforce them, because I don't believe I need that garrison in Mino anymore, because if the Tokugawa army in Mino attacked, Toyotomi's army right nearby would surely be able to stop them. So I felt okay abandoning the garrison. The bad news is that it caused a lot of public disorder because the castle is also broken down. So hopefully next turn the castle will be repaired and public order will be restored. Now, as I decided to implement my plan and attack the smaller of the enemy armies first, knowing it couldn't be reinforced by the Uesugi main force due to our ninja sabotage, it turned out, of course, there was another Uesugi main force standing right behind it, hidden in the trees, which now means Nobuhide's advance is going to be without reinforcement from the other Oda armies, and he is going to be ambushed by two Uesugi armies. This could be interesting. You can see from the balance bar there that the game certainly doesn't think we're going to win this battle, but when I actually get into the battle you can see the balance bar is a little bit more favourable, so perhaps things aren't so bad. The Oda forces are formed up in a marching column in the centre of the map. The Uesugi are coming from both sides with a mix of cavalry and heavy infantry. Most of their cavalry actually coming from the east side, with the infantry kind of spread evenly between both sides, but perhaps more heavily on the west side in terms of their infantry, because they have all their archers on the west side as well. So my first move is basically to form a defensive formation pointing both to the east and west, with some of my lighter support troops inside, including my generals. I'm placing Nobunaga in stand and fight formation to increase the morale and melee attack of my men. The enemy immediately cavalry charge my eastern side, but all of my eastern side are just Naginata Ashigaru, who are going to hold out very well against the enemy's cavalry charge, if not defeat them. On the northern part of the column I have loads of Yari Samurai. The enemy's cavalry tried to go up against these guys as well. A very bad move, they're going to suffer heavy damage. I'm also moving some Yari Samurai from my west side to intercept some enemy cavalry here. The rest of the west side there is long Yari Ashigaru. You can see are now advancing with their spear wall formation presented. This is going to go right into the enemy forces. The enemy coming in with Yari Samurai, who won't do particularly well against this spear wall. They don't really have the ability to break through it. Swordsmen would be more suited to this situation, so I wasn't very worried about this engagement. I thought I'd probably do quite well here. With the real trouble on my south side, where it's mostly just Yari Ashigaru, a couple of regiments of them defending against the enemy samurai, also taking fire from the enemy bowmen. That area of the battle could go wrong fast. But as we just heard, the enemy general has already been defeated. Excellent news right at the start of the battle. It was amongst these enemy pirate forces where the enemy general was fighting with his cavalry, and the cavalry of course were defeated easily by all the Naginata Ashigaru in the area. So good news from the beginning. Back out on the west side, I've detached the unit of Yari Samurai to go around the enemy's infantry formations and attack their archers, which are hidden on this small hill on the western side of the map. The enemy's archers aren't going to do very well at all, even though they took out a load of my men as they came in using their arrows. Now they're engaged in melee, they're in big trouble. Things are still going well then, it seems. over on the east side, you can see I've defeated another enemy unit of cavalry, and the men who did it can now come back in to hit all of the enemy's infantry from behind. A whole bunch of the enemy's pirate infantry are retreating because they just don't have the morale for this sustained assault, and you can see the Oda men actually have a fairly strong local numerical advantage, which is going to be sapping the enemy's morale. The situation is not the same here on the southwest part, where my Lone Sword Ashigaru and Yari Ashigaru are being gradually destroyed by the enemy's assault, so I need to get in there and try and support them as soon as I can. The good news is that the east side is already broken. We looked away for 5 seconds there, and all of the enemy's troops on the left side simply routed, meaning I can use all of these troops now to go over and support the west side. The one exception to that was where there were some samurai retainers fighting on against my katana samurai, so I decided to send in a few of the local Ashigaru to help out in this fight. They're not going to be particularly effective against the samurai retainers, but surrounding them and outnumbering them should damage their morale, and indeed they have just routed, so that's the end of them. And at the same time, all of the enemy forces attacking the west side decide to rout as well, realising that things are going very badly. So I don't even have to bother defeating the rest of them. Excellent news, the enemy's ambush has been completely beaten away, most of our troops are still alive, and now I can reform to face the rest of the enemy army. How lucky we are to have an enemy whose troops are so unskilled and generals so naive. Let's be fair, it was their first time facing us, but surely they must have heard about the power of the Oda army before. Surely someone would have told them that Oda men can't be beaten by merely ambushing them with greater numbers and more samurai. If any of those fleeing men over there make it home, perhaps they shall let the Uesugi lords know that they are by far the worst opponent that the Oda men have crushed. So that ambush didn't go as the Uesugi planned. However, as we saw in the opening to the battle, there is actually an Uesugi reinforcement army coming to help out the ambushing forces. So now the Oda men are reforming in a highly compact and defensive formation to receive them. Here we see one of the Uesugi general's horses rushing off just as the Uesugi reinforcements arrive. They're being led by these Lone Sword Ashigaru, a low morale unit that is not going to like what it sees when it comes over this small crest and sees the Oda formation standing strong and extremely powerful. They simply retreat the second they see any of the Oda men. Next comes some Long Yari Ashigaru. It seems these guys are willing to get a little bit closer to the powerful Oda formation. They're taking missile fire all the way though from the archers, right at the back of the formation that they can't possibly hope to ever get revenge on, and it seems that as they get a little closer, they too realise what's going on and try to get out of there. So the rest of the Uesugi men are samurai, and they aren't going to leave just because it looks like they're going to die. They would rather come in and try for themselves. So they continue their advance, still taking arrows as they come in and taking casualties, but the vast majority of them do make it to the Oda lines. You can see the Oda lines are presenting a very nice spear wall, the spears themselves already covered in the blood of other Uesugi men. And now these Uesugi troops are going to commit their own blood to these spears. They rush in, right into the spear wall, bunching up. The spears are pushing forwards, trying to act like a phalanx to get the enemy back away from the lines. And the enemy kind of realise what's going on, i.e. they're going to lose, and just retreat despite being samurai sworn to fight to the death. So the vast majority of the enemy samurai are out of there, and look how fast they're running. Just like earlier in the episode, we saw that when men run from the Oda, they run damn fast. It must be a sign that the Oda are truly powerful. Anyway, a decisive victory in what looked like a disastrous situation for the Oda. That went much better than I expected, and much worse than the enemy surely hoped. So here's the battle results screen. We lost around 400 men. The enemy lost around 2,400 men. An absolutely outstanding result from the ambushed force of Oda Nobuhide and Oda Nobunaga. The Uesugi's plan to capture Owari has now been ruined, and it means that my plan to isolate this other Uesugi main force and attack it with vast numerical superiority can now go ahead. I'm able to use all three of these army groups you see here to commence an assault on this Uesugi army. We have quite a large advantage, you can see from the balance bar. The men who survived that ambush are going to be reinforcing the enemy, but reinforcing us are two more armies. So now that Nobuhide's army has proven it can defeat pretty much anything, he shouldn't have any troubles at all with this Uesugi army, so I'm also resolving this assault. It's a decisive victory, but not as decisive as I would have liked. It seems we didn't actually destroy the enemy army. It killed maybe 2/3 of the enemy, losing 700 men, killing 1,300. Not as good a result as the one we just saw in the ambush, but that is just the nature of auto-resolves. But at least we're now pushing the Uesugi back. They're almost out of Owari. Not quite. I'm still going to have to chase them down and finish off all the survivors from the army group, including the enemy general. We can't really have surviving, considering he has dishonoured the Ueda clan very greatly. Now, since we recently mastered gunpowder mastery art, we can now pick a new art, and instead of focusing on military stuff, I'm coming over here to the civil side to work on tea ceremony, because this increases our diplomatic relations. And hopefully, if I can get some of the other clans to actually like me, there's a chance some of them will agree to peace and stop fighting with the anti-Oda coalition throughout the land. So now we're ending the next turn. A Hatakeyama army appears in Umi, doesn't assault the castle, but instead walks over to the crossroads. It sort of looks like they're intending to head north for whatever reason. The Honma are consolidating their position in Kaga, not leaving nor attacking.
These men are great at range and have a substantial effect on enemy morale. But they must be withdrawn before engaging in melee, or they will be massacred.
So there you go, the first units of Matchlock Ashigaru have joined the Oda army, and as the voice said, if they get engaged in melee, they're going down, but at range, they are super powerful. So now I'll just hack through the usual bad news. It looks like the enemy have been sabotaging some of our farmlands, and this is actually an increasing issue. The farmlands on the frontiers of the Oda domain are constantly being raided and attacked by the enemy, and we're actually going to face a food shortage if we're not careful. Anyway, let's focus back on what's happening in Owari. It looks like we've gained an agent who's been released from enemy captivity. It's a monk. He has some skill points available, so I decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour his skill points into a religious advisor, which makes him better at converting enemy characters. And I'm going to try and convert one of the two guys who's just sitting right next to us as an enemy ninja and I believe an enemy monk. It looked like the monk would be easier to convert, funnily enough, and luckily I succeeded. So I've now gained a new monk, so there are now 2 monks in Owari, though I have to wait until the next turn before I can use them. So hopefully this will help me in the ongoing agent war, which otherwise I am completely losing. Now back up in Mino, Toyotomi's army is advancing on that Tokugawa force, which has just been wandering around Mino for many turns now. I believe it's been there at least a year, not really doing anything. I was worried about going after them to finish them off, because I thought that Hatakeyama force in Umi might sneak over to Mino and attack the castle if I get my forces too far away from it. So although the Tokugawa are on the retreat, I can't chase them down, because Toyotomi has to stand by the castle, because it would be completely disastrous if we lost it. Now back in Owari, all our movement points have been restored, and it's time to deal with that Uesugi army, which is sitting in the forest just here. I'm moving 2 armies up to fight with them. This time I'm letting Nobunaga lead the attack, just getting him some extra experience. One day he may inherit the clan, so it'd be very useful to have him be a super elite officer. You can see the balance bar is completely there in our favour. We eliminate the Uesugi force completely. So Owari is finally at peace. Good news, and it looks like we're getting a level up for Nobuhide as a result. So now that Owari was at peace, I thought maybe I can sneak out and attack the nearby Tokugawa province, but you can see there's a giant Tokugawa standing army right next to it. So I realised, well, that's not going to happen. I can't leave Owari. So I decided to try and pull my men back together to form as safe a formation as possible. I want to get these 3 armies in reinforcement range of each other, ideally. So I'm moving Nobuhide into a reinforcement position where he could reinforce either of the other 2, and they can reinforce him. The castle itself, though, is a little bit vulnerable at the moment. There's no one in the castle, and that Hatakeyama army in Umi, if they happen to know about the castle being vulnerable, they could sneak over and just capture it. So I do need to be careful of what I'm doing here. Now back over far in the east, you might remember Kiyonori is still under threat from the Yamanouchi. I wanted to see whether his depleted army could quickly destroy these 2 Yamanouchi armies standing in the area, but I thought it would probably be a bit of a wasted battle to kill these guys. It's better for me to come back into Oda territory and start restoring some of my forces to get more powerful and fight those enemy armies once I can win outright. And I'm actually going to pull Kiyonori right back from the enemy border so they actually can't see him, hide him in the forest so they just have no idea where he is, and let him restore his numbers. So now we're back in Owari, and the thoughts about Owari Castle eventually got to me. I decided I really needed to commit some forces to defending it. So I'm going to have to abandon Nobuhide slightly. Hopefully the Tokugawa won't take advantage of this by attacking him. And as you can see, I sent Takayama there to guard the castle. The Tokugawa do try something in the end turn sequence. They're moving north, perhaps towards Mino, to reinforce their other army. Nobunaga tries to ambush them, but as you can see from the setup here, his force pretty much would be useless against the enemy. Even with the advantage of it being an ambush, I didn't think we could do any good there. So I just let them go, and their army just kind of disappeared. They must have gone into hiding somewhere in those forests. More bad news from the outer domain. More and more people go hungry as the Oda military requisitioning goes on. What makes it worse is that we seem to have stopped receiving rice from the farms on our borders. No doubt the enemy have put them to the torch. Father's strategy to fight over Owari is all well and good, but with half the local population in the army, there's no way we can sustain our hosts without food from the peaceful provinces. And these days, a peaceful province is a rare thing indeed. So now we're in the next end turn sequence, and that Hatakeyama army I was so worried about suddenly just disappears, rushing back to Iga. So it seems they didn't really have any plans after all, or perhaps I've scuppered their plans and now they're just retreating. So more bad news regarding agents, blah blah blah. Invasion force lands. Now that was some interesting news that's shot by. We've also been giving a mission, which is just to recruit a ninja. Pretty easy mission. You can see there at the Owari docks, a Chosakabe invasion force has landed. So now there's a new threat in Owari, along with the Tokugawa army. You can see on the right hand side of the screen. In the castle, an enemy ninja has been destroying, I believe, my rice exchange, which I had to fix up because it was very central to my economy to have that rice exchange there. Very annoying. So it's time to start dealing with the military threats. First, the Tokugawa, who at least believe they're hidden in the forest, but we actually know they're there. So I'm sending 3 armies to go and attack them. We have a large advantage, so yet again I'm going to auto-resolve just to get them out of the picture for a while. I'm not sure we'll be able to defeat all of them. It looks like we just kind of killed about half of them, taking actually not negligible losses there. 700 losses again for 1,300 or so kills. And that Tokugawa force has gone and sat in the forests in Mino now. Still a threat, but at least severely diminished, just like the other Tokugawa army in the more northern part of Mino. Now regarding the Chosakabe force, I wanted to stop them being able to storm Owari Castle, which I thought they might do. So I've moved half an army to go and stand on the road between them and Owari Castle, and of course the castle itself is heavily garrisoned. Meanwhile, I could have sent Nobuhide back to go and help out against the Chosakabe, but I wanted to finish off those Tokugawa guys, just to stop them from linking up with the other Tokugawa men just to the north, because that would have actually made a moderately formidable force to have to worry about. So I'm going to kill them while they're weak, get rid of that army, pretty easy. It does mean though that both Nobuhide and Nobuyuki's armies here are kind of off on a limb. It's actually going to take them 2 turns to get back to Owari Castle from here, because they use up loads of movement points moving across the open ground with no roads here, especially when it's forested. But at least they're now hidden, so the enemy don't know where those 2 armies are for now. Now, since that Hatakeyama army in Umi is gone, I thought it's probably safe for me to move General Toyotomi's forces against that other Tokugawa force, which has been harassing me for a long time now. Finally I managed to get them to give battle. We have a huge advantage. I'm going to auto-resolve again. I wouldn't expect anything but victory. We actually took a fair few casualties again, but casualties I can easily afford since Toyotomi's army probably isn't going to see any more action for a while. So there we go, we've taken out that Tokugawa army with ease. And now things are looking pretty safe all over the place, except for that Chosakabe force. So I decided to send Toyotomi's army to actually go and support Kiyonori instead, deciding he probably won't be all that useful in Mino for the next couple of turns. So now we're moving into the next end turn sequence. Let's see what the Chosakabe do. It looks like they just bypassed all of their forces. Perhaps they're trying to go for Mino as they had done in the past. Now a bride is offered to Oda Nobuyuki. She is a prudent wife, which for some reason reduces the morale of Nobuyuki's troops. But I thought a royal wedding is always fun, so I'll just allow him to have that bride anyway. Now down in the bottom right hand corner of the screen you can see a little flashing red icon, and that means there is a food shortage, potentially disastrous, and we'll see if I can find a way to solve it in the next Oda episode. That's all for this episode, but to see the Takeda dealing with the traitor in their own ranks, tune into the next episode of The Eternal Law.